In today's lesson, we're going to talk about rational and irrational numbers. The lesson objective for this lesson is that by the end of the lesson, I can identify rational and irrational numbers. We started talking about these last year, but we didn't go in depth. This year, we're going to go a little bit farther in depth, and we're going to expect you to be able to classify numbers as rational and irrational, and we're going to ask you to classify the different kinds of rational numbers. So here's how the chart works, okay? On this side are the rational numbers. Inside rational numbers, there are also categories of other numbers, and we're going to talk about what those mean. Over on this side is irrational numbers. And they are numbers that don't fit into the rational number side. So let's start with natural numbers. Natural numbers are also called counting numbers. Okay? Those are the numbers that you count. They start at 1, and they're all positive. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and they keep going. Okay? Whole numbers are natural numbers plus the number 0. Okay? Whole numbers are natural numbers plus the number 0. And I wanted to tell you that also under natural numbers, things like the square root of 25, that's a natural number. Because when you find the square root is 5, which is a counting number. Okay? So whole numbers are the same thing as counting numbers. They're all positives, plus you add the number 0. So let's talk about integers. Integers are natural numbers, whole numbers, and then we add negatives. So -1, -2, -4, -8. Get the picture? So integers encompass everything from whole numbers, natural numbers, and then we add in the positives and negatives. Rational numbers are all integers, all whole numbers, all natural numbers, and anything that can be written as a fraction. That's where we start putting fractions in, is when we start talking about rational numbers. So 1/2 is a rational number. 0.333 is a rational number because it's a repeating decimal and can be turned into a fraction. 333 thousandths repeating can also be written as 1/3, which is a rational number. So any number that can be written as a fraction is a rational number, okay? And that's something you're going to have to really work on. So let's talk about what are irrational numbers. Irrational numbers are everything else that cannot be written as a fraction, okay? So irrational numbers, here's a for instance, pi is an irrational number. And the reason that it's an irrational number is because it's a decimal that keeps going on and on forever and does not ever repeat. So that's why it's irrational, okay? A lot of your non-perfect squares are irrational. And you'll start to see that as we're doing square roots. The square root of 2 is a really long decimal that just keeps going on and on and on. So it is an irrational number. Now, not every square root is irrational. You have to find that square root and see if it's repeating or non-repeating, okay? So everything else goes into irrational numbers. We're going to talk mostly about is it rational or irrational, but you still need to know your other categories also. So make sure you write this chart down and you put some examples in it. So pretty quickly for the final slide, you're just going to decide, is this rational or is it irrational? Okay? So pause your video, right next to each of the examples, write rational or irrational, and try and think about why you think it's that way, okay? And then come back and see how you did. Okay, so let's see how you did. Well, I know that the square root of 25 is 5, so that is a counting number, so we know that that one's rational. Pi was an example that we gave, so that's irrational because it never repeats. It just continues to go on. The square root of 8, if you take the square root of 8, you find that it's not repeating, so it is also irrational. And 1 and 45 hundredths can be written as a fraction, 1 and 45 hundredths, and that's not simplified, but it can be, so that one is rational. We're going to do a lot more of these, and we're going to ask you to look at numbers and put them into natural, whole, integers, that kind of thing. But I want you to remember the rules for rational and irrational. Rational means anything that can be written as a fraction, and irrational means anything else that is not a repeating decimal, okay, or that cannot be written as a fraction.